Hi, everybody, and welcome to another, we hope, very interesting chat with myself and Rob Bradstock. So today we're answering questions. So on YouTube and just generally people ask questions about this type of thing. So the format is I'm going to ask the question, Rob's going to answer, I'm going to add maybe to the answer or not, and we'll go backwards and forwards. So anyway, good morning, Rob. How's Ireland?
Ireland is very cold. We are experiencing snow, which is quite weird, but rather nice. So we're all trying to keep warm and be cozy and attempt to answer people's questions in the best way that we can. So welcome everyone, and I hope you enjoy the YouTube video or the podcast, whichever you're listening or watching to.
Yeah, snow isn't common in your part of Ireland, is it? Just as an aside.
No, particularly in the southwest, because we have we sort of have the Gulf Stream coming in, which affects the climate a bit further west of me. I'm just outside of that zone, but no, we don't. We get snow on the mountains, but not normally down at the level I'm at, which is about 500 feet or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's an aside. That wasn't one of the questions we've been asked.
Weather report from southwest Ireland.
That was me being nosy, just recognizing that. So I've got a bunch of questions here, so we're going to get into them now. So the first one is, and this is, what can I do when things go wrong? Pretty common question. So off we go. So Rob, what can somebody do when things go wrong?
Well, I think there's quite a lot of things you can do. I think to start off with, it's quite good to just not adopt the idea that something has gone wrong and to look at it from a slightly different perspective. Try to look at it as an opportunity to make adjustments and change in your life, and just realize that when one door closes, if it's that sort of situation, that another one will open, and that now that you're beginning to become a conscious co-creator, that you can have much more input into the changing of this event, whatever it is. So the next thing I think is not to judge yourself for having done something wrong, and realize that it's all just part of a process. And that you don't have to feel a victim, you don't have to feel that powerlessness. And at the same time, just allow whatever feelings to come up to be there, notice them, but then try not to focus on them, especially if they're what one might refer to as so-called negative feelings. So you become aware of them, try to just be aware of them, because you don't want to start suppressing. That's definitely not a good idea from my experience. The next thing to do is try to understand what beliefs or belief has created this event that's seemingly not going so well. Find a new belief, which is the opposite of the old belief, and start to do the exercises that we talked about before, which is 5 minutes a day, concentrating on the new belief in a very simple phrase or statement, combined with imagination and connecting with a future probability where things are much more favorable and much better. And
what I'll do is just saying that I'll put a link in the description of the script that you just mentioned.
Okay, very good, very good. Yes, focusing on the desired result is very important. Drawing that probability that we talked about before to you, a new probability, a much more favorable probability, and then try as far as possible to take your attention away from the seemingly awkward or difficult or so-called wrong event, and focus as much as possible on something completely different. And particularly during the period of each day that when you are inserting a new belief. I think the other thing is, if it really is things are going quite difficultly, to ask for some sort of support from another person who's into this reality creation stuff, because that's very important to get a bit of reassurance, because I think it's quite easy to, to get overwhelmed by things. I mean, it depends on how bad things have got, but I think the thing I've talked about before is it is really important to have communication with other people and support while you're working through what is a process. It's not going to be an instant fix, but it could be. But just to be patient and compassionate with yourself, and try to trust that all is unfolding as it needs to, so that you can align with a more favorable situation. And that's quite a lot that I've said there, but I think that to me is what I've attempted to do when things have gone a bit, pear-shaped. And it does require a little bit of effort. It requires a little bit of trust, well, quite a lot of trust. And the main thing is just to, I suppose, not to panic, not to freak out, and just to know that, you're not alone with this, and that you can also receive guidance from your inner self. And in many ways, there's help. Help is available. So you're not in this on your own. I think that's, what do you think, David? Is that a good?
Yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, I've written down the steps. Totally agree with all of them. I'll just add my own slant, if you like, and reaffirm. So I think the idea, when I said, when things go wrong, I didn't do this, which I was tempted to do, and your first response was exactly right, which is, it's not that something's gone wrong. At ego level, it can appear as though something's gone wrong in that sense, but it is part of your process. And so it's not to grasp so much at the wrongness of it. And I think that's really important. And the only other thing I would say is, learn the art of ignoring things, because of course we're in a state of consciousness, and if you focus on it, you're putting energy into it. So actually, it's really good if you're going through a tricky time to do the exercise that will link up below, but also to find something else enjoyable to do. Go and do something. Go and walk in nature. Go and do some exercise. Go to bed. Whatever it is, but do something preferably enjoyable, but that distracts you, if you like, so you're not wholly focused on the problem. And other than that, yeah, absolutely perfect. And I think the only thing I was gonna add, which is ask help from your broader self. I've certainly found Aaron, my broader self, a font of wisdom. Obviously, he's not going through the problems, so there is that. But at the end of the day, through dreams and other things, one can get some really good insights in it. And that, yeah, absolutely perfect. So in the comments below, if you've got any questions about that, or if you're going through something in particular, add them in and we'll check out the comments and maybe we can offer some kind of advice in some kind of way. So cool. Anything else to add to that, Rob, before we move on to the next question?
Well, I mean, I think, as always, it's about taking things gently, and it's you have to accept where you're at the particular time. And I mean, I think this thing about being kind and compassionate with yourself can't be overemphasized.
No, definitely.
Because we can be our own worst enemies. I mean, I know for myself, I still, even after all these years of doing this whole, conscious reality creation, I do find myself getting impatient with myself and saying, oh, God, don't I know better by now? I've been studying this stuff. And that is very unhelpful. You start where you are, you do the best you can, and you try to follow the suggestions that we've given, and you read some more of the Seth material, and talk to other people about it, and know that you're not alone. I think that's really, really important. I've experienced a lot of being alone with this kind of stuff, and now these ideas have become more commonplace, and there are more people out there who understand them. There's a feeling of that with help and with support and with other people knowing what's going on, trouble shared as a troubled heart is a very good expression. And I think That's important to remember as well. So don't isolate yourself. Don't lock yourself away. You know, reach out if you possibly can, even if you're feeling like terrible, because you'd be surprised how people are willing to lend a hand or just listen. You know, sometimes it's just really important to be able to be heard. So yeah, those are the only other things I'd add to it, which are sort of general life things anyhow. But
yeah, they are. But I do think with this, once you start to explore this material, it becomes really compelling. You know, you really begin to understand more and more about how this works, and so one energetically feels more drawn to it. So if you can't talk to anybody about it, and a lot of people have partners, I'm generalizing, but a lot of people have partners that they can't talk. You know, this is weird and wacky and all the rest of it. Whereas obviously for me, it's kind of like metaphysical science. You know, I regard this as a science project in spirituality and personal development. So, you know, so yeah, don't hide away. You know, reach out, comment below, you know, and if we can offer any advice, we can. So okay, nice one, thank you very much. So now we're going to move on to the next question. I've just got it, going to pull it up onto the screen. Okay, so here's a nice one. If there's no, now this is about time, mind-boggling time. So if there's no linear time and everything happens in the same instant, and we covered that in, I think, the last video or the one before. If there's no linear time and everything happens at the same instant, how can I change what may happen in 6 months when it's already happened in the instant that there is now? I hope that makes sense. I copied that off. So yeah, if there's no linear time, if everything's instantly now, how can I actually change something in 6 months if it's already happened? Now, even the language is tricky, isn't it? I would have back all the time. But anyway, so that's the next question.
Okay, well, yes, I mean, that's a very, very good question. I think the thing that one needs to understand, which is, don't get me wrong, it's very hard to grasp sometimes, you know, when you get into this whole thing about, you know, non-linear time, the spacious present and all of this. But I think that the really important thing to remember is that even though everything is occurring in the spacious present, there are multiple and infinite probabilities. And where a certain event may seem to have occurred in one line of your future, so-called future self, future life, it's by no means fixed that you are necessarily going to experience it. So as everything operates from the present moment, you, from your beliefs in the present, create your future in the present. So nothing is fixed. All of these probabilities do actually exist, but the one that you want to actually participate in and be part of, that's where the conscious co-creation comes in. So even though these events, all of these events do exist now, whether you're actually the self that is in the present moment is going to be part of that event is sort of up to you. What do you think, David? Is that a good way to describe it?
I think the challenge is that to talk about it, we've got to talk in language that's almost the opposite of what we're talking about. You know, so we talk about simultaneous time, then we talk about the future and the past. So the first thing I say is, yes, that nothing is set. Even by asking the question, you create a new probability. You know, so it's like in every second, one is from the spacious present creating and has available to all probabilities. So it's almost like don't worry about the question in a way, you know, because at ego level, we can't really experience it. So if one wants to experience one's timeless nature, then I would say explore the idea of the inner senses, you know, the inner psychic senses, and then you can get an actual direct experience of that. But so that's what I'd say. Go to those to get the answer. But as Rob says, all probabilities are available. I think that's probably at ego level where one needs to just go, okay. And if I want to experience it, I'll go to another part of myself. That's what I would say. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that, you know, it's really important that one realizes that, you know, even though everything is occurring in the spacious present, change is, it doesn't mean that everything's written in stone. It's not like predestined, you know, everything is predestined. That's a misunderstanding of what it means. And it is hard to get your mind around, but realize that even though everything is occurring in the present, that you have the power to make changes. You have the power to influence your present and of course your future. And we've talked about this, I think, in another talk, and also influence your past, because and how you interpret your past. So there's quite a lot to absorb there. But I think just start off by remembering that you are a conscious co-creator, and you can draw a future, so-called future probability, that's the most beneficial to you by doing what we've already discussed. Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to describe it. It's very, very complicated, but actually also very simple. So it's one of these things. Read more about it in the Seth Material, because he explains it so brilliantly, so much better than I could possibly explain it. Yeah, a good question. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for asking that one.
Yeah, I think it is such a complicated question, but actually the thing to do is to keep it simple and just know that probabilities are available, and that it will play out for the best for everybody anyway. And kind of settle with that, I suppose that would be one thing. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, okay. Yeah, I want a relationship with a particular person. So this is a lady asking a question. I want a relationship with a particular man. Can you ask how I can turn that from platonic to romantic? And that's quite a common question, I think, that I've seen around this kind of stuff. So any thoughts on that?
Well, once again, I would always come back to, what are your beliefs? It's all about you. It's not really about the other person. And when you really investigate the beliefs that you have about intimacy, about opening up, about allowing things to develop, I'd say that's a very good place to begin with. So just make sure that you are really available, and that you really do want that intimacy, that you want that relationship to change. Because if you have beliefs that are in any way blocking that, you're going to draw people towards you who are going to reflect what you believe. But then there's another aspect of it here is, you know, perhaps this particular individual, perhaps the best possible relationship that you could have with this person is only as a friend. And there are many different variations, aspects of so-called love. And it may be that person is, you know, has their own probabilities, their own aims and wishes and path through life. And it may be that person isn't necessarily ready. So I think the only thing you can do is to work with your own beliefs and try to focus in on the best possible probability, and perhaps just relaxing more about outcomes, enjoying what you do have with that person at the moment, and just allowing things to develop naturally and easily, rather than trying to force things. Because from my experience, you start to try and force things, you might seemingly get what you want, but in actual fact, you could easily actually get something that isn't really what you want at all. So yes, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we each, so to get technical about it, you know, we each see our own versions of reality. So that means that it is about us, but we are in a cooperative process with other people. other souls, other conscious entities, whatever, or everyone's call them. And so I would just focus on the highest good for the relationship and both individual parties, and just see how that plays out, rather than, as you say, I have experience, and I know other people, where they say, no, it's got to be Brad Pitt. I've got to have Brad Pitt. I've got to have, this person over here. It's definitely the only one. And actually, that hasn't worked out well, because it's come from quite an ego. I'm not saying it is with this lady, but it comes from a kind of wanting point of view. Do you know what I mean? Rather than for the highest good point of view. And so, yeah, I would say that there's different layers of activity going on, which is why it is platonic right now. And so you can do the exercise. So let's say we'll link it up, where you imagine you're having a relationship and maybe you're holding hands and that type of thing. But I would also, and that might create a situation where the person has a conversation with you about the relationship out of the blue. You know what I mean? So it will have some kind of effect on it, but I would say don't force it, because the likelihood is there are a few people that you have amazing relationship with, with all the variations of love and sex and intimacy and all those things are available. And maybe in that person's development right now, it's not them. So I would be open to love generally, know that you're lovable generally, and that you're capable of giving and receiving love, and take it on that kind of basis, I think. Yeah. Anything else to add? What do you think?
Well, I just think, just because we are so human, we do tend to get a bit fixated on, being life working out in a particular way. And if it doesn't work in that particular way, then, and of course, this excludes all of the other magical possibilities that could happen. Yes. You could walk down the street and actually meet the real person you're supposed to be with. And you miss that person because you're so focused in on the other person that you think. So I think, once again, coming back to relaxing and trusting about it all, not getting into a panic, and it's got to be a certain way. I think that's a good rule for all aspects of life, to allow the magical to occur. I think when you have a clear intention, you drop that into what Seth would refer to as framework 2, and then you allow framework 2, which is the inner workings of where all reality is created, to actually take care of the details for you. Because I think the ego self actually, we really don't know what we want really at some point. We have a rough idea, and the more we communicate with that inner self, I think it helps.
I think we know what we want. We think we know what we want, but we don't know what's best for us, because we don't, which is, sorry to jump in, because we don't have all the information.
Yeah.
So, and it could be the same with a job. It could be the same with anything at all, that it's got to go this way. I think you can force it. You can force, reality, if you like. But you can't bend it to your ego will. I'm not saying that that's something that this person's doing, but allow reality to surprise you and be magical. And that comes with a sense of relaxation and thinking of, just having the best relationship with the best person in the best way that's good for everybody. And it might definitely not be the person that you think it is.
Yes, but it could also be that person as well. You just don't know. And that's what the magic is that you, by bringing the energy back to yourself, yes, and working on your own stuff and opening yourself and being more relaxed. Also, that's way more attractive. If you aren't pushing it, if you're, it actually will draw the right person to you, rather than if you're kind of desperate, if you're, I know for myself, in my earlier life, the more desperate I was to have a relationship with somebody, the more it basically doomed it.
This is basic dating advice right here. No, you're absolutely right. But I think so summarize this one. I'd say, as you say, come back to yourself. I'd make a list of beliefs about yourself, love, the person, and just put that work in first. Really look at your feelings, be open to the best relationship for both of you, whether that's platonic and or not, and that be open to the magic of the best relationship coming to you effortlessly, easily, without judging it has to be a particular person.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Great, nice one, excellent.
And have fun and relax about it, if possible. If possible. I know it's not always possible, because one does get, infatuated and all of these other things, but that's fine as well. It's all fine.
Yeah.
All we're talking about is just suggestions to maybe look at it from a slightly different viewpoint. And if what we're saying makes sense, then go for it. But if it doesn't, then that's also fine. Just, you have to follow your own path, your own truth in the end.
Because there's a purpose in that for you, so it's about not negating what you're doing. But I do think that's particularly good advice, so I think it's it's the best advice that I would give right now. So okay, so let's have a look. Another one is, this is about relationships and or people again. It says, if my wife is wanting different things to my wanting, so I'm presuming this person is in a relationship. So my wife is wanting different things to what I'm wanting. Can we cancel each other out? I.e., if I concentrate on the positive and she is naturally inclined to assume the negative, how does that affect my reality?
Interesting. Well, yet again, I think it all comes back to the individual. I don't really believe you're cancelling anything out. I think what's really happening is that you're just noticing that her beliefs are different from yours. And obviously, you need to keep working on your own beliefs. You need to keep working on expanding your own ideas of yourself, your creativity, whatever aspect of your life you're working on. And you could include in that that your partner is and yourself are more in sync as far as living is concerned. And maybe perhaps it could be that she's mirroring an aspect of yourself that you haven't completely got in touch with. I mean, I would say the closer your relationship with another person, the more chance is that you will find things that you maybe are not aware of in your own life that perhaps you've denied, start to being mirrored to you in that other person. And so they are, although it can be really tough, they can be brilliant teachers. They can really show you what you need to look at. And it can be very painful and it can be very, very difficult. But if you can allow yourself to just go with that flow, I think you can make it a hell of a lot easier for yourself. And it is very hard sometimes to really see because often we can't see it in ourselves. So we set it up so that we have this opportunity to see it in other people. So I think just keep on being yourself, keep on doing what you're doing, and keep communicating as much as possible. Visualize a much more harmonious and connected relationship. I mean, it's a bit like the previous question in a way.
Yes,
they're all relevant. It's all very similar. What do you think, David? Is that
yeah, absolutely right. I think it's certainly with my I think any relationship. So go back a couple of. I think sometimes we think that we don't fully appreciate that everything is included with our belief system. Do you know what I mean? We kind of go, well, it's not this or it's not that or whatever. So I would embrace the relationship as part of your creation and include it in that your beliefs are reflected in, good, not so good within that relationship. And also that a relationship's an opportunity. So myself and Claire, my partner, we went through this process. We still go this process where we realize that the relationship itself actually allows us to learn about ourselves and being in a relationship, and that it does mirror us. It's a very non-judgmental process. It's not all, it's not, we have our moments, if you like, but even when we have our moments, because we recognize that it is our creation, jointly and individually our creation, then that allows us to come to it for a certain point of view. But yes, I would think about, recognize that your partner is probably reflecting your most intimate beliefs about yourself and reality. And because we're here to learn, what better teacher do you have? If somebody down the street did it that you don't know, do you know what I mean? That you don't know, you've got no connection with at all, pressed a couple of buttons or whatever, it might not affect you in the same way. It might not give you the opportunity to go, you know what, yeah, that is this. But I would come back to exactly that. There's no cancelling out. The question itself is there isn't an either or. It's not that one has more and one has less. You each create your own reality, and it's reflected for you individually. So yeah, no cancelling out. Come back to yourself, and again, write down your beliefs about love, relationships, your partner, self-worth, all those things. Write them all down, and then maybe begin to observe your relationship, and you'll see there is some connection between them. Anything else to add?
No, I think that's very good. And yeah, again, just take it easy. Don't judge yourself too hardly. I mean, I think that's it's a human thing that we tend to judge ourselves so harshly, and especially I think when you initially get into this conscious creation stuff, there's this tendency to judge oneself for not being good enough or whatever. And these are the real core beliefs that need to be changed. So the reflections that we have in all relationships. And I mean, you said something, David, that if somebody in the street was to tell you something, you probably wouldn't know. But if it's somebody that you're really intimately connected with, you have to take notice. And that's really, really good, because when you take notice and you understand the conscious creation that's going on, then you know that you can change it. Seth talks about, and I think I mentioned this before, that life is like a painting. We're doing this painting, we're creating all of these events and situations, all the rest of it. But if we don't like it, we have the power to change it in whatever aspect it is, whether it's relationships or money or your health or any of these aspects. And that is the big message, is that we have the power to make changes in our life. And it's not an instant, like waving a magic wand. It's a process, and you need to take your time with it and just practice it, and you get better and better at it the more you do it. Yeah,
perfect. And that leads us to the final question, which is, and this question, and we've talked about this in all the other questions, it's about beliefs. Okay, so throughout all the stuff that we've talked about in this conversation and other ones, we've talked about that if one accepts that our beliefs, emotions, actually create the events of our lives, that physical reality is a feedback system for our unique individual beliefs. So the question is, how long does it, so it's a bit of how long does it take to change a belief? Was the actual question. It wouldn't be how I'd phrase it, but it is how somebody phrased it. So yeah, what would you say to that? And I think this is kind of the culmination of everything that we're talking about in a way, because if you can master this and do you know what I mean, and accept other things that we said, then you really can begin to have a really positive impact in your life. So how long does it take to change a belief?
Well, Seth says that if you have enough intention and energy and desire, it is actually possible to change a belief almost instantaneously. But I think that is, while being possible, I personally, I haven't experienced an instant change, but I have experienced significant changes in my life. So I think it's variable. It depending on whether you've really got down to the core belief, which is the belief the real important beliefs that underlie the more superficial beliefs, it can take, it can take different amounts of time. I mean, I think Seth says in Nature of Personal Reality that when you do, when you insert a new belief and do this exercise that we've talked about before, leave it at least a few days. I mean, or a few, I think actually he says, I think if I'm right, he says a few weeks. And I always feel it's 3 weeks is when you should, if things are working, you should start to see changes. You may see it before that time, but you have to allow a certain amount of time for things to kind of settle. And the changes may already be happening in the in the present, but because we live in the camouflage reality, sometimes it takes a bit of so-called time for things to actually manifest. So it's important not to lose heart in that time thinking, oh, nothing's happening. Seth says somewhere like, do this exercise for 5 to 10 minutes a day and then don't hassle it. Well, it's like that in the longer term as well. Don't hassle it. Just trust that it is unfolding. Now, if you get intuitions that make you feel like, well, maybe I need to change, what I'm saying in this phrase that I'm using, or this new belief I'm inserting, you can tinker around with it, but you'll get to a point where you feel like, oh, that is absolutely the belief that I now want to insert, and it's the direct opposite of the one I want to let go of. So I think that's
yeah.
Time is different. Time is going to take, but if it takes longer, it doesn't matter, because things are going to change.
I mean, I completely agree. I'd say it's not about time. I understand the question and why that question is quite common. Like, how long will it take to ABC, change my life, or whatever it is? But it's really not about in time. I suppose, picking up on what you said, I think it's about kind of emotional energy. It's more of an energy thing than a time thing. So sometimes I see it as like a balance, like a seesaw. On one side of the seesaw, you've got all this energy that you've been focusing on for a number of years, that type of things, whatever it would be, your particular belief. And on the other side, there's nothing. You don't have a counter. You don't have the opposite belief that has no energy in it at all. And you've got to begin to allow the energy to dissipate from this old belief, if you like, and build up the energy. And then at a certain point, as we know, if we imagine a seesaw, the more you put in here, it will eventually do this. And although that appears to take time, it's more about the amount of energy on each side of the equation, if you like. I'm not sure. Hopefully that makes sense. So I think 3 weeks is a really good time. And I think one of the challenges is that we are impatient because we're so enamored with the physical senses. When we don't see something changing like that, we lose faith, we lose heart. And I think that's 3 weeks, twice a day, using the script below, I think is exactly. Before then, don't even think about it. Don't even expect some massive change to happen, but you will feel differently. And that's usually, for me, the first indication that things are changing. So I think, So summarize, for me, it's not about time. It's more about energy and putting more energy into what you want and allowing energy to dissipate from the other one.
And I think it's important also, I mean, Seth talks about this at one point. I can't remember which book it was in. It might have been one of the early sessions, possibly the ones when they very first started channeling. And he said that it's really important to do the exercise every day, because some days it's much more powerful than other days. And you don't know which of those days is the more powerful day. So you actually need to keep doing it.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that's quite important to bear in mind is, about the spacious present, that you're creating this in the spacious present. Therefore, not to allow this so-called, cause and effect thing to influence you too much. For example, a belief that, well, I've had this belief for years, how am I going to change it? You know, I think it's really important to realize that each moment is a new moment where you have the opportunity to create something new. And because the past doesn't exist, even though it appears to exist within camouflage reality, you have a brand new opportunity to do this change in every new moment point. But because we, sorry, just carry on. Yeah.
So I'll just so hold your thought. I'm just wanting to add in, just to clarify, that the idea that one has had something for a long time and therefore it's difficult to change is a belief in itself. Just to clarify that point, that's not a truth. That's a belief, and you can and part of it, I think, is letting go of is identifying ideas like that and then choosing to let them go. So I just wanted to clarify that.
No, I think that's a really good point. It's a really good point. I mean, it's so mind-boggling that I think, you know, any kind of, you know, clarity on this is really, because we have this kind of slight schizophrenia where we're, you know, in physical reality, seemingly in linear time, and yet we know that that is an illusion, and that the way that we change things more effectively is by understanding that there is no cause and effect and karma and all the rest of it. And yet we still have to live within that. You know, we've chosen to live in a physical reality, and things actually do, you know, you may want to change something, but it actually takes a certain amount of so-called time for something to manifest. Otherwise, you'd think something and it would immediately manifest. But that's not the purpose of physical reality. The purpose of physical reality is to understand that that you've chosen to have this experience of time and to see your changes, as in the same way as when you're making a painting. The painting isn't finished immediately. You actually get to see the process of, you know, putting this brushstroke here and this brushstroke here. So it's it's kind of quite a difficult concept. And I mean, I wrestle with it, you know, still quite a bit. I mean, I think I understand it so much more than I used to, but it's still, you know, it's still quite a tough one to completely get your mind around. And in the end, you just have to realize that the ego, the everyday self, you know, can't really completely get it. It needs to be it needs to work in conjunction with the inner self, the greater self, and the entity. And that's why these other things we've suggested, like psychological time, trusting, following new intuition, is all part of the process, so that you use all the various tools, and the combination of all of those tools helps you move through life in a much easier way ultimately.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I think the next video just kind of pinged in my head. The next video, I think we could talk about this idea of how does one connect oneself with that broader identity, you know. So I think that would be a really good thing, because when you don't do that, you end up with things called affirmations, you know, done, you know, purely at an ego level of people hammering at their beliefs and nothing changes, you know, because there's not the process hasn't been defined, if you like. So it is the idea, you know, how long does it take? Well, it takes as long as it takes to change a belief. It's more about energy than it is time. But actually, in order to do it, as you're saying, in order to do it more effectively, then one needs to combine it with a broader an understanding that there's more going on than what one sees in physical reality. And really, that's almost the most important part, because as you say, you know, I can imagine in my head, looking at my bank account with £100,000, okay, £200,000. I can do that in my head. So I created it in the universe, okay, because I am the universe. You know, I created it in the universe, but in order to manifest that, I need to focus my energy on it. I need to engage in other areas. So in one way, we do create it instantly in our mind, but there are definite processes that have to happen in order to manifest it within physical reality. So yeah, so don't focus on the time. I think just come back to the actual question. Mm-hmm. Don't focus on the time. 3 weeks of the script, trust the process, and allow yourself to have faith that the universe, if you want to call it that, is making the changes, because it can't help but make the changes. It's just how it works. Yeah. Anything to round off on that?
Well, I think, just continue to trust that things are unfolding as they need to. I think that's such an important, and try to have some fun with the whole thing. It's not supposed to be deadly serious, this stuff. We're supposed to be, obviously everybody comes up with areas of their, we tend to focus so much on what in quotes doesn't seem to be working. But if you look around you, it's very good sometimes just to make a list of all of the things that are going well for you, and realize how actually there's so many things in your life that are just absolutely brilliant. And that gratitude, I think, draws more of the same. And I think that's another thing to add to the process. I know I'm probably repeating myself, but I think we can't repeat it too often, because I know for myself that, there's a lot to keep, there's a lot of balls to keep juggling, basically. And, you get better at juggling, but it's I think the thing if I've watched, just to go with the juggling thing, if you watch somebody juggling, they get to a point where that they're not thinking about it. They've actually relaxed so much so, and they're so good at it, that it just is a beautiful flow, and something else happens. A magic occurs in your life. And that's what I think we need to remember and allow to happen. It's not forcing things, it's allowing things to happen. And I think that applies to all of the questions that have been asked today. Yeah. And I really hope this has been helpful for everyone, and realize that, we're having these conversations and discussions, because we want to help ourselves, we want to help other people, and we're just sharing our experiences, and continue to ask questions, and if we can help you, we'd like to try and do that. But the answers really lie within yourself. That's really important. You really know what's right for you ultimately, and you are your own authority, which is another thing that Seth says, and which is why I like it so much, because it's not religious dogma, it's not a rigid kind of structure. It's very much a getting in touch with your spontaneous, joyful, creative self, and that's what the whole thing is really all about. Learning to understand that, and the wonderful nature of who you are. Yeah, so
that's a pretty good way to finish, I think. So there's a couple of other questions that I don't, we've gone to an hour now, so I think that's we'll cover those in another video. But yeah, I hope that's helpful for everybody. There'll be a link below to the script. As Rob says, and just to reiterate, you were born into a state of grace. You, for want of a better phrase, you are your own authority, and that's what we're learning about more and more. And I think that's a really good place to start. That you are, an amazing, amazing person, multidimensional being in the broadest sense. But trust yourself, and and you really can start to feel your own authority in the world within your own reality. So good luck with that. Please comment below if you've got any questions. Please subscribe and hit the bell and all that YouTube-y kind of stuff. Or if you're on the podcast, we hope you enjoyed that. There'll be another one coming soon. And I think, we will explore, I think it'd be a good thing to explore this idea of the different aspects of the self, the soul, the ego, and how they entity, all those types of words, how they interrelate with each other, and why it's a really ultimately an essential journey to take to begin to combine those different parts of oneself. So that's what we'll do in a video coming soon, as well as maybe answering some more questions. That's it, everybody. Have a great day, evening or morning, wherever you're at, and we'll see you on the next video. Take care.
Yeah, thank you very much again for watching and listening. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll be back again with some more ideas and chats. And thanks again for listening, and hope to see you next time. Or if you can't see us, hope you can hear us next time. And enjoy your lives for now. Bye for now.
Take care. Bye-bye. There we are. Out. Nice one.